Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
I am doing well.
Good.
Today we're going to take on the federal budget and solve all the problems.
Yes.
I don't know why they'd listen to me now. They didn't listen to me when I was up there. But I think we're on the right track. I think they and those people in Washington, they're on the wrong track.
Yes.
Anyway, this is the 18th of December. And it is Tuesday, and in 4 days the government could get shut down. And people are panicking over this. I mean, it's the end of the world coming. But the reason I mention that today is that by the time we finish this program, the news may have changed. You know, say one side may have capitulated and given in to the other side, but the deadline is the 12 o'clock on the 21st.
Yes.
So that's a couple more days left, and everybody's angling to get the best deal. It was reported this morning that maybe they've solved the problem of the wall. Now, if that's the case, what's left? Because it had nothing to, this budget argument had nothing to do with the budget. It's nothing to do with the problems we have, nothing to do with the spending, and nothing to do with the Federal Reserve. It's nothing to do with war, and nothing to do with welfare state. All this is incidental to this one thing, which boils down to really a political event. How are we going to beat Trump in the next election and not give him his wall? And there's various reasons why it seems that it shouldn't be that difficult to blame the individuals, except it depends on who has control of the mass media. It makes a difference. So I don't believe you probably have lost any sleep last night, certainly worrying about the government closing down. And secretly there are a few libertarians who would say, why not just close it down for a long time?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember we lived through the shutdown of, 12, I think it was, and I was devastated to find out that I was non-essential personnel. I felt pretty essential, but the only thing that happened to us is that I didn't have to go to work and I still got paid. So I went to a park, federal park. They wouldn't let us park at the park because they were shut down. So there's a big shutdown for everyone. But yeah, Sarah Sanders, the White House spokesperson, said this morning that they will reconsider this demand that there be this $5 billion for the wall. Apparently they're going to revisit a Democrat proposal from earlier in the year where you'll have $26 billion overall for border security, with $1.6 billion for the wall. She said, "Oh, we'll get the money somewhere else."
Yeah.
So that's just first signs of a back down, I think.
And that should scare everybody too. But how do they do this? You know, you say, well, you're not allowed to do some of these things. But, you know, that deep budget they have, the black budget, especially on the military things, they always seem to find it. And remember during some of the Iran-Contra scandal, the CIA found money.
Yeah,
They're also in business making money. So they're worrying about the funding. But this is out in the open, and it's a big deal for the PR, you know, the publicity of it all. But I consider the whole thing a farce, you know, because they have duped the people into believing this is a real big issue. This is a Republican issue versus a Democrat issue. And just yesterday, we spent time trying to explain, you know, it's too bipartisan. This is superficial. But yesterday, we explained how secretly the Democrats, on a procedural vote, 5 of them slip over and help the Republicans to pass a rule which was to guarantee that this Congress could not even debate the idea of getting out of the war in Yemen. Fortunately, we talked about the resolution in the Senate that passed, and that was very important. But the way they kept it coming up from the House, my goodness, if it had come up, it might have passed. Which you know could be the case once they realize how bad this war is. So this is the whole thing. This thing is a farce. It's a distraction. Has nothing to do with good government, and the people get engulfed with this. So now the big thing is well, who gets blamed? Will it be the Democrats or the Republicans or whomever? But Trump indicated that he'd probably take the blame for it, thinking that he's doing it in defense of border security. And yet I think where the blame ends up is who has the domination of the mainstream media.
Yeah.
And I don't think Trump has has the Main Street media on his side, and that's it. So this is the name of the game because of blame. But I think people should realize that things are so out of control up there that they're not going to likely solve this problem because most of the important things are done behind the scenes. Just think of what's been passed. 3/4 of the budget has already been passed. What did they make sure they got passed? DOD and HHS.
Oh, for sure.
3/4 of the budget has already been passed. And the 7 bills that are left to be passed, there's 6 of them they've agreed on. So they have the Department of Homeland Security, and it's down to this $4 to $5 billion argument. But it's a political argument, is all, because it's symbolic of what Trump claims he needs to save the world, and the Democrats use this to bash him.
And just like you say, the substantive things are buried. Who among Americans would even know about this little rule vote that we talked about with Yemen? This is a huge matter of war and peace, totally buried by the mainstream media. They have no interest at all. But this kind of game, this kind of political farce, well, that gets everyone's attention. And it's objectively true that the mainstream media has it in for Trump. They hate him. They hate the fact he's an outsider. The Democrats hate Trump. Just because they hate him, they don't really disagree with a lot of his policies. But this is a way to stick it to him. And Trump, on his part, is politically vulnerable because he's had a difficult time. The stock market's not doing that great right now. And he, unfortunately for him, tied himself to that mast. So the one thing that he has keeping his coalition together is the idea of my wall, I got to build this wall. And if he gives up too much, he's going to lose his base. The Democrats, of course, are going to start talking about seniors and soldiers. If you get a shutdown, you don't care about the troops, you don't care about older Americans.
Well, let's look at the brighter side for a moment.
Okay.
We have to look hard.
Let's do that.
The brighter side is this. Things were in chaos 2.5 years ago during the 2016 election. And the person that was representing the most outside position, clean up the mess, go in and take care of all this, the independent person, he wins the election. People had given up on government. The polls showed 70-80% of people don't trust the government. It goes on, and they don't hear the truth. And they, was looking for a change. And right now, a little closure here actually could serve our purpose, because once again, the people are going to say, even though they're not going to listen to this esoteric argument that it's not really cutting anything, but they're going to say, there they go again. The government doesn't work. We need the government to work. We need bipartisanship. But there'll be more people angry at the government. That's why if they would really cut something, then build up the anger. And what if the Congress said, well, we can't do it because we don't have the money and we don't believe in printing money. Yeah. I mean, the house of cards comes down. So no, there's going to be even the amount of attention it's gotten so far is going to stir up some disappointment and anger toward the government. That's not so bad if you can take that energy and direct it into something positive. And of course, that's always been my goal.
And that's what we try to do even on the border issue. We've talked about it so many times. You've talked about it for many, many years. The way the media frames it is in such simplistic terms. Your open border or a closed border, where obviously that we have a very, very different position on.
Yeah, and, this is the whole thing. My position has not been complex because I took a position, Trump wouldn't have liked it during the campaign. I said, I don't like fences. Yeah. I'm always afraid they're going to fence us in.
Yeah,
too many countries have done that. The Iron Curtain was to fence people in, not out. So I worry about fences. I like more openness. But my argument was that you should remove the incentive for people to come here. Yes, some have the incentive because they have had a bad time in Central America. That might have called attention to the fact that we messed around in Central America a long time, so we did plant some seeds down there that caused some problem. But anyway, there are some people who have an incentive, but they've been coming, legally, and they are good citizens, and that is not the problem. It's this mass organization that is going on. And the incentives that I want to remove is, first, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of the 14th Amendment. I don't think for a minute that if a pregnant woman steps 1 foot into America and delivers a baby, that baby all of a sudden has every every welfare benefit and citizenship.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. So I don't believe in birthright citizenship, and I don't believe breaking our laws coming into the country is the most practical first step to having citizenship in this country. But that doesn't mean, see, I couldn't ever accept the argument, well, there are 15, 20 million now, they're illegal, round them up, get the army out there. Well, just for practical reasons, you can't do it. So you can't do it. But there's no reason in the world that you have to, because of morality, make everybody a citizen and have them qualify for every welfare benefit. And there's obviously a lot of immigrants do not depend on it. They don't come for that reason, but a lot of them do, and they immediately get care. And it's a job situation. So I would say remove the incentives. And when people come, in the old days, they had to have sponsors be responsible for themselves, or the person who's the sponsor had to help them. But as long as we have this system, we are going to have a lot of problems. But I don't think, the way I see it, that all of a sudden the fence is going to make have the solution for it. It doesn't seem becoming.
And when you were mentioning fences keeping us in, I was reminded of, it's just in the past couple of years that if you owe the IRS money, you can't get a passport, you can't relinquish your citizenship and move overseas. So we have these kind of virtual fences already being constructed for Americans. But certainly the issue is not being thought about in a comprehensive way. You're either against illegals or you want to open the borders. And as you point out, there are other solutions. Nobody really wants to think about them because that, of course, threatens the health of the state, which is getting bigger and bigger, is their incentive. Providing welfare gives you power and control over people.
And the one thing I didn't mention on the border problem was get rid of all the drug laws.
Yeah.
That's where the real tragedy is on the borders, the drug gangs and the drug dealers. But you have to remember, one of the essential services that they did not take the money away was the DEA. You have to have our drug enforcement agencies out there. That is very essential, which is absolutely ridiculous. Why don't they have one that they'll stick to and take the money away from Mueller? I don't think he's serving anybody's interest in justice. And when you look at what Comey did and these guys, I don't think they're very good examples on what justice should be all about. And I think we should deny some of their funding more than 3 days.
Maybe we should have done a show on all the places that should be denied funding. It'd probably be a 4 times as long show.
What would be your favorite?
That would be my favorite. But what about the stock market? It's having a bad time. Do you think there's anything related to the uncertainty over the threatened shutdown?
Yeah, uncertainty, I think it all has the uncertainty of the future on how we handle, the problem the Fed has created. And right now they're at a crossroads because tomorrow's a big meeting, the Federal Reserve. Yeah. And are they going to continue tightening or are they going to give up? Either way, if they give up on tightening, they're saying, oh my goodness, it's much worse than we ever thought. But if they continue to tighten, they make the case for Trump. Don't raise interest rates, you'll ruin it. The only thing about Trump's position on that, it's not too bad of politics. He's setting the stage to try to get away from being blamed. Even though he loved the stock market when interest rates were low, now the Fed raised it, he's going to blame it. In the old days, the Fed never got blamed for anything. That's one thing that I think we've achieved over the years is call attention to the importance and significance of the Federal Reserve. So that to me is an issue that we should have dealt with, this type of an economy, because once again, we don't have the huge bankrupt, bailouts.
Yeah.
The Fed bails out, but what about in the last recession? Hundreds of billions of dollars we passed to deliberately, appropriate money and bail out the people, not the little guy, all the rich. So that's the kind of stuff that will never be up here in the budget. If we were in the midst of the crisis or when it reoccurs and they have this argument, if they have a close down, they will not close down that because the people need to keep their jobs, but what they're really doing is protecting the banking industry and the corporations who have borrowed so much money and did all these buybacks. So this is far from openness. We're supposed to have openness, but there is really not the transparency that we really need. And once again, back to our example of how they hid the prohibition against debating in the House the issue of war in Yemen.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if I could just close out, Dr. Paul, I would just remind our viewers, first of all, thank you for watching and thank you for growing our viewership over the year. We appreciate it very much. As you know, the Ron Paul Liberty Report is part of the Ron Paul Institute. And as of today, we have about 2 weeks left where people can make their tax-deductible donation and have it count for the year 2018. And this is when we raise the bulk of our money. So if you like what the Ron Paul Liberty Report does, getting the message out to millions of people a year. If you like the Ron Paul Institute and what it does, publishing thousands of articles, several conferences, a lot of media appearances, getting the word out about peace and prosperity, please do consider a tax-deductible donation before the end of 2018. Just go to ronpaulinstitute.org/support, or on the menu, click support, make your donation. We'll put a link in the description, but we really appreciate you helping us keep the show going and growing the audience. Looking forward to 2019.
Very good. And once again, what I see here going on, this is a sort of a technical, it's not a philosophic discussion about what should happen in Washington, because everybody up there in Washington, almost, we have exception, that they believe in interventionism. They believe in the welfare state and the warfare state, us policing the world, and therefore they need to spend the money. So they're not talking philosophy. They're not talking about the real role of government. They're talking about political squabbles and who has the power and who gets the first bailout money. That's what it's all about. So it's really disgusting. But it also indicates that this will continue. Close the government down or don't close it down for 2 or 3 days. It's the only value that could come is call attention to the American people and get more people upset with big government and get the people to understand they're upset for a reason. And that's because the government is not doing what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to protect our liberty, and all they do is undermine our liberty and intrude on our privacy and intrude on people around the world. And until they realize that, until we agree with that, all this tinkering around and running up the debt, who knows? They'll say, well, the debt this year is going to be $1 trillion. They have no idea whether it's going to be 900 billion, 1.2 trillion, or what. And sometimes it's a lot higher than they predict. It sometimes could be off $300 or $400 billion. So if we hit a sharp downturn in the next 6 months, who knows what the deficit is? So they have no control of this. What they do have control, and they guard and protect, Republicans and Democrats, our universities and our Main Street media, is the justification for an intrusive, overbearing, unconstitutional type of government. That is the message that we have to know and understand, and get a lot more people working in the direction of saying, we've had enough. What we want is limited government. We want the protection of our liberty, and we want the government to get out of our lives. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.